Welcome to Books in the World, the longest-running literary cable TV program in the country. Books in the World is a production of the Cape Cod Writers Center. I'm your host, Elisa Metcalf, and today I am excited to welcome author Debi Graham-Leard and talk about her new book, Wedding Interrupted, which is the fourth in the Gwen Andrews series. Welcome, Debi.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. I was thrilled to be invited back.
So this new book, Wedding Interrupted, is more than just a cozy mystery. It is a whodunit, a little ghost story, a little love story. It's action-adventure. It's really jam-packed with all of that stuff. It was really fun to read. I really enjoyed reading it.
Oh, I thank you for that.
Sure. So tell us a little bit about what goes on in this series, in this particular
book in the
Yeah.
series. Okay. Well, this is the fourth in the Gwen Andrews mystery series. And this one brings in some different characters. I try with each book to, some characters remain and other characters drop off and the new characters come in. And you try to mix it up like that to keep it interesting for the reader. In Wedding Interrupted, Gwen is contacted by her cousin who has been in California for years. And the cousin wants Gwen to allow her granddaughter to have her wedding in Gwen's backyard, which is a gorgeous garden.
Gwen lives in this, it's a renovated library and grounds.
Yes, it is. It's a converted library into her home. And it's actually based on the abandoned library in Norton, Massachusetts.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah.
Because it's very visual. You really get a picture of what this house looks like, the house and the grounds and the garden. I mean, that's what I noticed right off the bat, was the scene setting in this book was really spectacular.
Oh, thank you. I always try to have my readers almost create a movie in their mind as they're reading the story, so they know where she is and what she's looking at and everything that's around her.
Yeah, it was very exciting. And it starts with a bang. So Sally is the cousin.
Correct.
Cousin Sally kind of pops up out of nowhere and kind of presents Gwen with this, proposition. Can her daughter have this wedding there on her beautiful grounds that are meticulously kept? You get the sense that Gwen is really an avid gardener, and she takes a lot of time and care with the grounds on her property.
That's exactly what she does. She's a longtime member of the garden club.
Right.
And very proud of her property.
Sure. So, but she's also, polite and wants to help her cousin out, so she reluctantly agrees to have this large wedding.
Right, and her reluctance is because she hasn't seen her cousin Sally for decades. Sally has moved now from California back to Cape Cod and has presented this challenge to cousin Gwen. Like you say, she reluctantly agrees. Of course, the story then keeps going, and it's the granddaughter who's getting married. And during the wedding, of course, a body drops. Which
of course.
you have to have a body. But in a cozy mystery like this, I consider these traditional mysteries with some cozy influence, which simply means that Gwen is just a normal person who lives in a small town. And if there's any bodies and blood and all that, it happens off screen. It's not thriller at all. And that makes it a pleasant read, even though there is a dead person.
Right. Yes. It wasn't gore. I mean, I guess factually it was a gory way that he died. But anyway, we'll get there. So the story starts out. The wedding is happening. People are coming, and naturally they are traipsing all over her flower beds and parking where they shouldn't park. But she is just being like a very gracious host and keeping her mouth shut. While all of this is going on, and it's a little last minute too. So there's this kerfuffle and a lot of chaos.
Exactly, and she's just holding her tongue and hoping it will be over soon.
Right, and then
the
fire. So Some of the decorations the kids have taken to the wedding party has taken to putting up their own decorations, and they have the little Chinese lanterns,
Right, and the
with the paper
with the candle inside.
Yes, so things catch on fire with the tablecloths, and then the trees.
Napkins are flowing all over the place. Yeah.
So there's just chaos. I mean, when you're reading this book, it's so fast paced, and things are just happening one after the other. I mean, it really was a lot of fun. And there's humor in it also. You know, while all this chaos is going on, you know, Gwen is just like, you know, this is really, and being so gracious. So the wedding, as the title implies, is interrupted.
Exactly, exactly.
But on top of the wedding fiasco, the father of the bride, so the parents of the bride are also people Gwen doesn't know very well.
She doesn't know them at all.
So they show up, and clearly there's something going on with this couple, the mom and dad. The dad is just drunk as a skunk, and the mom has what looks like some kind of battering
abuse,
situation. Yeah, but we don't know really what's going on with that, but it definitely adds to the intrigue. And then, so the wedding gets canceled. They're all trying to recover from the fire and the ground, because the fire department comes and tramples all over, Gwen's house and
more
her
trampling
property. Yes, more trampling. So the next morning, Gwen is wandering around looking at the devastation, and comes across the body of the drunk dad.
And it is located in the garage that she is having built. It's a new garage. It's not even finished.
Right. So that makes things even more intriguing. There's footprints and whatnot. So how does Gwen handle all of this?
Well, number one, the wife had escaped earlier when the wedding was breaking up the day before. So didn't necessarily leave with the father. So he was just left there.
Right, he passed out, didn't he?
Yeah, and nobody really knew where he was, or they really didn't care. So they didn't search for him at all. So it was up to Gwen the next day when she found him.
Right.
And then this detective shows up, who's kind of a Columbo wannabe, and he instantly assumes that the wife had something to do with the death because of their antithesis toward each other. And then cousin Sally, this is her daughter who's being accused, comes to Gwen and says, "Gwen, you've got to help me prove that my daughter had nothing to do with this."
Right, because they take her to jail. They arrested her.
They arrested her, right, right. And so from there on, Gwen and Sally are now partners, trying to resolve what happened.
Sure, because they realized the police department, the incompetent detective, because the competent detective, who also happens to be handsome and a little love interest of Gwen's, is conveniently away at a conference. So they get this lackey stand-in who's like, yeah, easy case, open shut, just grab the wife, throw her in the clink. But of course, Gwen and Sally know better, and they are left to do all the investigating on their own.
Exactly. Even though the police say, stay out of it, just stay out of it.
Yes, stay out of it.
But that's not how amateur sleuths work.
No, it's not. But so her home, Gwen's home, is in Harbor Falls. Is that a real town, or is that fictional?
That is a fictional version of Norton, Massachusetts.
Okay.
When I first started writing the very first book, The Uninvited Guest, that was a decision I had to make. My starting point for the first book, I had no idea at the time I was going to write a series, but it was the old abandoned library in Norton. And I always thought it would be a cool place to live. So that is where my character lived, in the converted library. And then one day when I was thinking about, well, she's a gardener, she's going to be in a garden tour, I moved the old library to the other side of the common, and it instantly was no longer Norton. I took that whole town and moved it to the coast of Massachusetts, and renamed it Harbor Falls. So it is totally fictional. I was no longer a slave to the street names or the buildings or where they were, any of that. And I could add buildings. I added an entire harborside shoreline shopping district, which was kind of cool.
Very convenient author trick there you got, Debi. So,
well, it's fiction. I can do what I want.
It is. But what's not fiction is the concern over the bridge traffic. So Sally and her family live on the Cape.
Correct.
And so there is some back and forth between the Cape and Harbor Falls. And I shout out to some of the locals, that they're always like this big discussion about, well, if we go now, we're going to hit the bridge traffic, and when we come back, and all this planning. And I thought that was really fun because the struggle is real.
It is real. And I do try to, even though my town is fictional, I try to bring in local flavor whenever I can.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I thought, maybe it was a real town, because it was so well described and laid out, and you really got a sense of the whole area.
Right. Well, it's somewhere around Plymouth, that part of the coast, but it's not a real town at all.
Yeah.
It's all made up.
Great. No, nice job.
All right.
So in the other books, is Gwen also in this house?
Yes, she is in that converted library from the beginning.
Oh, great.
All through the books, and even, into the one that I'm writing now.
Terrific. The regular detective is away, and Robin is hauled off to jail. And they're trying to exonerate her. So they come up with an idea that there are a lot of people, before the fire took place in the wedding, people were taking photographs, and they tried to amass all these people and their photographs and sleuth it out that way. Right,
and trying to figure out if there was anyone different that was in the crowd, because these were all strangers to Gwen. She didn't know any of them. So who was there that should not have been there, that might have had a gripe against the husband somehow? And they end up talking to the photographer, and he's helping them quite a bit with the photographs, but they're not really much help. And they finally decide they've got to start visiting the guests that live in the area and see if they can't find out, was there anyone who did not like the dad, who might have wanted him gone?
It seemed like a lot of people didn't like the dad.
That is very true.
You don't miss him, when he dies.
No, and I try to do that with each mystery. Is the person who dies, again, nobody will miss. They're not a nice person.
Right.
You don't care that they're gone. Because I don't want to do anything to the nice people.
Right. No, it's very fun. And as I was reading it, I couldn't help thinking that you must be having a lot of fun writing it.
Oh, I do. I have since the beginning.
Yeah, it really comes across in here, because there's a lot of slapstick humor as well. Some, especially with Gwen and Ben, the detective that she likes, these, where they're trying to get together, and there's always some kind of outside force that's keeping them apart, which keeps that suspense and intrigue going.
Well, as you bring that up, her husband Parker is brought back as a ghost in the very first story.
Yes, I was going to talk about Parker.
Yes, and now it's becoming complicated, because he comes back and visits her once in a while. And I've talked to a lot of ghost hunters, and some people have spoken to ghosts, so it wasn't an unusual situation. So Parker will come back, usually when Gwen's upset about something, and they will have a conversation, and he loves her to death and she loves him to death. But then she's alive and he is not, and he has said to her, I know I can't satisfy you, so you need to have male companions.
Right.
And the first guy, Hal, is just disappeared by the second story, and now Ben is coming into the picture. But I'm writing myself into a corner with this threesome. So it's becoming complicated as I'm writing the fifth story in the series.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Now, is Parker alive in some of the earlier books?
No, he has already passed away.
Oh, wow. Okay.
By the time the uninvited guest starts. He was struck by lightning on the golf course about 3 years earlier.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Because there are some, this is even though it's a series, they're clearly standalone books. I wouldn't feel like I was missing anything or a lack of information when I was reading the book, but there are some nicely strategically placed references to the earlier books that made me want to go back and read them.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Which is good, but I started thinking, oh, well, maybe Parker's alive and we can.
Oh, no, unfortunately he is not. He is a ghost. But I fashioned him after Topper. Do you remember the Topper series?
Somewhat, yes.
Yeah, you're
yes.
a little younger than me, but the Topper ghosts were very friendly and they weren't threatening at all, and that's Parker. He is a nice guy in life and a nice guy as a ghost.
And I liked how he's just peppered in a little, like it's not a ghost story where his presence is really large and where you start thinking, where the book loses, you start thinking it's not realistic because, you really get the sense that these are real people and they're real places. And then the ghost element, if there was too much of it, it might throw you a bit where you kind of caught between two different genres. But you could almost think of him as, the way somebody would talk to, that he's not an actual ghost, that she sees him and feels him and talks to him as her own, for therapy and whatnot.
Well, when he first shows up in The Uninvited Guest, she thinks she's lost her mind. And, she finally,
Sure.
she compares it to dreaming. She thinks she's dreaming. But in a dream, when you wake up, everything goes poof. But with Parker's visit, she remembers every single little word they said to each other. So she starts to believe that, well, yeah, he is.
Right.
His spirit has found me. They're connected.
But nobody else, somebody can see him. Does somebody else see him?
Yes, Ben, the other detective.
Oh, Ben.
Yes, and he originally is a non-believer now that's referring, can I refer to one of the other stories?
Sure.
Okay. Bed, Breakfast, and Blackmail is the third story, and this one was a lot of fun because it takes place in the local bed and breakfast who have their own ghost. And at one point, Gwen has Parker follow her across the the Village Green in Harbor Falls, over to the B&B, and he finds their ghost, and he brings back some information that helps her solve not the main mystery, but a side story, which was a lot of fun. But during the investigation, which Ben is involved in, he bumps into their ghost, and then he finally becomes a believer. And then eventually, he meets Parker in the one we're talking about now.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And it kind of gives her, gives Gwen permission to pursue this relationship.
Yeah,
with
to a
him.
degree. To a degree.
Yes, it's not, it's not a romance novel by any sense, but it's nice to have that little thread in there of her love life.
And that's what makes it fun to write fiction in general and mysteries specifically, is coming up with all these little side stories.
Right. Yeah, they are fun. And like Sally, for instance, is a great cook and is always whipping up these terrific recipes throughout the book. So you have like the gardening aspect and the cooking aspect. And I was wondering how much of that is Debi?
Quite a bit of it.
Do you garden a lot?
Yeah, I have a very respectable backyard.
Oh,
yeah,
terrific.
Yeah, my husband has built a lot of the structures, the decks and the bridge and the arbors and things like that. And we have a joke, which I, of course, repeated in the Gwen stories, that he does the hardware, I do the software, which is the plants.
Right.
Yeah.
Terrific. Yeah, because you get the sense, that there's a lot of you in here because it's close to the heart.
Yes.
You know, you can tell the writing comes from there.
Well, I always tell my audiences when I do my author talk about the process of writing that authors will usually take a facet of themselves. It's going to be in their character. It's not totally them. Gwen is maybe half me, and half perhaps someone I could have been if I made different decisions as I was growing up and maturing. So it's kind of a half and half.
Right. So what did you do before you started writing? Because
Well,
this is your
My retirement hobby.
Yes.
It's not a business at all. It's a hobby. I was in marketing at a jewelry company down in Providence.
So
And
completely unrelated.
Unrelated to writing fiction. You know, I would do business writing, and I was involved in creating brochures for the customers and things like that.
And were you an avid reader?
Always, my entire life.
And mysteries in particular?
Mysteries in particular. And when I was little down in Delaware, we lived out in the country, and we had our ponies, and we would go down once a month to the end of the country road on our ponies to the bookmobile once a month and pick a few books and ride them back home.
Oh, that's terrific. What a great
so
story.
I was always a reader, but never even considered that I could write one.
So at what point did you know, what was the inspiration?
I was sitting around after I retired, right? And I mean, you can cook and clean and go to lunch with your friends, but there's a lot of hours left in the day. So reading, of course, fills a lot of that time. And I finished a book by, I think it was Carolyn Hart. She has published 50 mysteries. And I closed the book and I said, why can't I do this? I should be able to write a book. And so that's why I even tried. And it took a long time. I had a very long learning curve to absorb the skill of writing fiction, because I didn't get very far when I realized I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, you know now, for
I
sure.
have just absorbed all the skills from other authors and workshops and seminars and weekend retreats.
Right. I noticed the genre of mystery writing and the cozy mysteries, there is a big support system. Like there are so many things available to writers of that genre. You know, support groups, online groups, conferences. Seems to be more than other genres of writing in the writing department available to those.
Yeah, and I
types
think
of
that's
authors.
because mysteries are the top genre. People love to read mysteries because they like to figure it out as they go along with the author figuring it out, and they love to solve it by the end if they can. Yeah, and it's better for an author if it's a surprise. But you don't want to just have somebody pop up at the last couple of paragraphs that your reader never met.
Yes, then they feel cheated.
Right, so the culprit has to be placed all along in the story, so it's not a surprise. And then they'll think, oh yeah, I remember that character saying this or doing that or whatever. And it backed up the fact that, yeah, that person did it.
Right. Well, that's great. A lot of fun. What are you working on now?
Now, well, do you want to go to the standalone first?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Right, so outside of the Gwen Andrews
Outside of Gwen,
mysteries,
right,
we have
because-
something completely different.
Yeah, this was the fourth mystery for Gwen, and I had this story just floating around in my head. It's called The Life She Left Behind. And I said, well, I'm just going to take a break from Gwen, and I'm going to write a different story. So this is about a young woman who lives in Boston. She's broken up with her boyfriend, who used to be her boss, and she has driven down to Delaware, no surprise, I'm from Delaware, for her 20th high school reunion in order to just get away from him. She figured he would never, ever figure out where she was. She just needed to break the connection with this guy. And the story is about what happens to her when she's in Delaware. And I don't want to give too much away.
No.
But this was such fun. But it's not a series at all. It's strictly a standalone. A standalone.
And your publisher, Riverhaven, they publish all your books.
Yes, they do.
How did you come to find them?
Well, I did the normal, I got to the point where I wanted to publish. and I did the agent hunt, which is so frustrating and not fruitful. And then you go from that to the smaller publishers who use in-house editors and don't require agents. That was the same frustration. And then one weekend, Stephanie Blackman did a seminar at the Cape Cod Writer Center about her publishing business. She's in Whitman. Her publishing house is called Riverhaven Books. And she's, I call it a hybrid publisher. It's not self-publishing and it's not from a big publisher. It's somewhere in between. She is an English professor at a local college, so she does the editing. And we worked very, very well together. I decided to go with her. If we need to sit down and discuss something, we can meet, because she's not that far away.
Terrific. And it's predominantly mysteries?
No, she has everything. She has a whole stable of authors with different genres. But I work very well with her. What do? We coordinate on the covers.
Right.
And she doesn't mess with my title, which some of the big publishers will do.
Sure.
They'll.
Well, it's just like a terrific match because, you know, you've put out some really great books. And as I said, I really enjoyed Wedding Interrupted. It was a really fun read, very fast-paced. And it's made me want to go back and read some of the other books.
That's terrific.
So thank you. And I wish you continued success with your writing. And do let us know. We have, you know, there's more stuff coming out. If people want to see what you're up to and all the books you've written, they can look up Debi Graham-Leard.
On Amazon.
On Amazon.
Yes. And I'm the only Debi-Leard on Amazon.
On Amazon.
I'm the only one
Terrific.
that shows up, and the 5 books will appear.
All right. Well, continued success. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching Books in the World. To view more programs like this one or to know what's going on in the writing world, you can go to CapeCodWriterCenter.org.